gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from Record Store Day with the help of our special guest, Senior Director of Content Marketing Upwork. Robert, how are you?
Ian, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And more importantly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, which is vinyl records and Record Store Day.
How many Record Store Days do you think you've been to?
You know, I've probably been to 6 or 7 or 8 Record Store Days, and every time they sort of get bigger and better, if you will. You know, the first ones that I went to show up maybe an hour, ahead of a record store opening. And now I camp out, starting at probably 4 or 5 a.m., waiting for the record store to open up at 9 or 10 or something like that. And I find I'm still kind of buried in the line a little bit. So I've put in my years, I think, and I look forward to it every year and do it all over again.
We're going to dig real deep into Record Store Day, vinyl, and the growing obsession with vinyl here in a little bit. But first, tell us a little bit about your role at Upwork.
Yeah, I oversee content marketing here at Upwork, and I kind of look at it as three pillars. We have our traditional content marketing, where we produce thought leadership, SEO content, a lot of video content, infographics, all of the great stuff that we use across the funnel to, build awareness, attract customers, and get them to join our platform. I also oversee a customer advocacy function. So we work with our most passionate and most successful customers to shine a spotlight on them, to amplify their success, and to really inspire others to achieve big things on Upwork. And then we have a very talented multimedia enablement team that is basically an in-house production studio. And so they run virtual and live events. They do wonderful audio and video content, and they have a whole host of AI tools at their disposal as well. So it feels like when we get these kind of 3 groups together, we can really make magic happen and produce some really awesome stuff for our customers.
Meredith, what the heck is Record Store Day?
So Record Store Day was naturally thought of by a group of independent record store owners who came up with the idea in an effort to sort of support these independently owned brick and mortar stores. And they came up with the idea in Baltimore in 2007. It was namely like the heads of the group were Chris Brown of Bull Moose Music and Eric Levin from Criminal Music.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And there were a handful of other indie record store owners who were part of that group as well. And so they wanted to also celebrate like how these record stores were really like a musical hub in their local communities and how they also built community around that. So though they thought of it in 2007, the first actual Record Store Day was 2008. And this isn't just like a day where you go to your record store and everything is normal, right? It's actually an event. So customers can expect to find special and limited releases on vinyl. Sometimes there are live performances at the store.
Hey, what's happening?
There are artist meet and greets. So on the first Record Store Day in 2008, Metallica was actually at the Rasputin Records in San Francisco.
Thousands of music fans queued up, some camping out for days just to get inside this record store. But the pandemonium wasn't for any special deals, just some very special guests.
Record stores are
They're disappearing, and we want them to stay.
Bay Area rock legends Metallica have long been outspoken about the role of digital downloads in the music business, going back to the days of Napster and illegal file sharing. Now, they're headlining for independent retailers.
And I was looking at this year's roundup of folks, and in Phoenix, where I live, original members of Alice Cooper's band, Michael Bruce and Neil Smith, were at Asylum Records. And stores also do things like limited runs of t-shirts and merch celebrating the day. There's lots going on. I feel like in some places there's like face painting and like things for kids too. Like it's really like for all sorts of folks who want to come in and peruse and browse their records. And then on the Record Store Day website, they offer in advance like a list of these special releases. But the interesting thing for me was they also specify that there is no website where these can be pre-ordered. Like you have to actually go to the store in person on that day. Often because they're limited releases, you have to be there first, right? So you have to get in line. And so they also specify that record stores can't sell those special releases until the day after online. And so for example, like this year, the event was on April 12th. And so stores couldn't sell those special releases until the 13th. And that this year that included albums from like Post Malone. I think he did a tribute to Nirvana on like a special yellow vinyl. Taylor Swift did a 7-inch special release. I'm trying to think. There was something from Charlie XCX. There were a bunch, hundreds of special releases. So it's definitely like a special day. And I feel like because of Record Store Day, like this has led to a lot of growth in vinyl sales, which is super cool. So according to the Recording Industry Association of America, vinyl sales rose 7% in 2024 to $1.4 billion, which surpassed CDs, which I was like, when was the last time I bought a CD? And CDs have sold $541 million. So CDs
which is
are
crazy.
Like, also crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
But CDs are obviously much less popular. So I thought it was super cool that it's like actually having a big impact in the vinyl industry. Though it's like founded in the US, it's also spread worldwide. So part of that is one of the co-founders in 2013, this guy, Michael Kurtz. He was made a knight, so a chevalier of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres in France for Record Store Day's contribution to the cultural and artistic life of the French people. So it's definitely like a really important day and is being recognized worldwide.
Just to cut in, I was really excited to hear you say that because, Robert, you might not know this, but Meredith used to teach French. So I was excited in the prep doc to hear the pronunciation. We might have to, can we get it again?
Yeah. Chevalier of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres in France. That's the real thing. It's hard to switch from French to English, I feel like.
It's hard for me to even think of anything to say in French.
It sounded very smooth, and I was just bathing in the luxuriousness of it as you were saying. Yeah,
French is such a pretty language, I feel like. Yeah. Thanks, Robert. A few other things to share about the event. I feel like it's truly like run by the people and for the people. And because of that, I feel like there's a distinct tone that the Record Store Day folks set as part of the event culture. Like just respectful, friendly, community focused. One thing that stuck out for me on that note is like under things to know and remember on the Record Store Day website, it says, speaking of changes, everyone is still going through them right now, including your local record store employees. They're doing everything they can to get you the titles you want, but some things like pressing plant emergency quarantines or part-time news shipping facility workers learning from their mistakes or a boat blocking the Suez Canal are beyond their control and legitimately may affect their ability to get you your records. Let's all be nice and patient and understanding, especially if we're talking about days or titles meant to celebrate and support indie record stores. So I thought it was like very sweet and also humorous. But all that said, if I were to take lessons from all of this, one, I feel like the most obvious one is run in-person events, bring people together in person, create exclusive content. And I would say set like rules around it so that it stays exclusive, right? So like the stores, like not being able to pre-order copies of these records and not letting the stores sell them online until the day after. And so if you run in-person events, I would say at those events, have celebrity or musician appearances or performances, and then create analog content. Like I feel like having the tangible record and having it be like, it's not like, I mean, it takes up space, right? So you have to plan on how to like carry it, how to store it, how to take care of it. And I feel like that all adds to the tangible experience of listening to records and enjoying the music. But Robert, I'm wondering, one, you shared that you didn't really go in early to Record Store Day this year, but you did make a Record Store Day purchase. Can you share what that was and what you feel like the draw is to vinyl?
Yeah, so this year I only made one Record Store Day purchase, which was Remy Wolf. She's a great artist. She released a couple of her early EPs on vinyl for the first time. And yeah, I'm a sucker for sort of special pressings. This was not only something that wasn't available on vinyl, but also came on clear vinyl, had a nice gatefold, nice packaging and everything like that. And I think just that sort of, the physicality of it all, right? It's an experience. It's nice to take the record out of the sleeve, to look at the artwork, to read the liner notes and things like that. And just the process of putting it on the turntable, putting the needle down, turning it over at the halfway point. Like you're really invested in the entire experience. And it's a different way of listening to music than it is, firing up Spotify or, turning on the radio or something like that. You're much more connected to it, I think. And that's part of the draw for me.
Definitely.
It's incredible to me learning this story that they had an idea in 2007 and freaking Metallica goes to Record Store Day, the first one.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
We might need to do a documentary, the three of us on Record Store Day. I don't know if there is one, but that's insane.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Every year they have an ambassador that, is a musician or an artist that helps, spread the word. This year, I think it was Post Malone. Meredith, you mentioned he had a release. He did a 7-inch with Taylor Swift as well. And so that's part of the hype, right? It's this idea of they're, really kind of small community events centered around your local independent record store and the vinyl community that supports it, but also has the support of individuals like Post Malone or Taylor Swift. I think the Foo Fighters have been ambassadors before. And so you feel very connected even, to these, giant megastars. And you feel like, oh, wow, they're part of this community too. And they're invested in vinyl and music and, the community that we've built, again, around our local stores, just as much as I am. And it feels even more special that way.
Sure does. I would love to know, I would need to get my hands on the emails between them and Metallica and just be like, we're doing something called Record Store Day. Do you want to be involved? It's never happened before. But I think that speaks to and we'll get into this a little bit later, but it speaks to the idea, it speaks to the power of a great idea executed well, right? We have this thing that we want to do that is going to get everybody into record stores, ultimately to buy more stuff, but also to celebrate, records and vinyl and record stores and the process of buying and all these other things. But, it starts with capitalism, right? It starts with consumerism. That's the first step, right? It's not people trading theirs,
I mean, you're exactly right. It's all about buying more vinyl and frankly, buying vinyl that you probably don't need. One of the things that I had to try really hard not to buy this year is they had a new version of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, which is his solo album after he left the Beatles. I have 4 copies behind me on the shelf. The one this year was a special, I think called a zoetrope version. So when you spin it on the turntable, it has kind of this animation. I think you even have to look at it through a certain sort of camera shutter speed in order to get the actual zoetrope effect. But so, there's very little chance that, I would actually do this. I'm not going to sit at the turntable and look at it through my iPhone or something like that. But there was a very big part of me that was like, damn, this is cool. I need another copy of this. I can only get it now. And I had to try really hard. And frankly, if I think if my local record store had it, I probably would have bought it and justified it as, a little treat to myself. But I think, all that being said, it doesn't feel capitalistic. It doesn't feel like a money grab. And I think this is where the power of, community really comes in, right? It feels like a celebration of music. It feels like a celebration of vinyl. I think we all go in knowing that we don't really need any of this stuff. It's, most of it's available on, streaming platform, or again, we probably already have another copy somewhere, despite the exclusivity of it. But it feels like an event. It feels like, a way to connect with people that are passionate about something like you are. And, frankly, a support for those independent stores. I have a store that I go to all the time, and the owner knows me, and we talk every time I come in. He knows kind of when to expect me. If I come in later than I normally do, he's sort of like, hey, why weren't you in the morning? You're usually a morning guy. And, that's nice. And I love the idea that on this day, I can maybe spend a little more and show him that, hey, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate that I have a place that's close by that I can buy the music that I love. And, I can kind of say thank you in a way. And so, again, despite this kind of capitalistic, sort of, undertone, it is really, again, sort of this community celebration, I think.
Walk me through your first record store day. Well, take me back in time.
The first record store day, I went to, I think there was a Rasputin Records. It's kind of a San Francisco Bay Area chain here. They have a location in Berkeley and San Francisco. And they had one, like my local shopping mall in the East Bay. And I didn't really know what it was. I showed up, I don't know, maybe half an hour before.
Wait, where?
It's in Newark. It used to be the New Park Mall in Newark, which I think is kind of
funny,
kind of burned down now, basically.
I think there's one near me in I think Pleasant Hill.
This was several years ago. The Rasputin is no longer there, but I showed up again, maybe hour before it opened. I was the only one there. I sat in front of the little metal grill and, waited for them to open up. I think they had a box or two of stuff. I flipped through, I picked up a couple things, and I was kind of in and out in, I don't know, 5 minutes or whatever. And then the last record store day that I did.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. What year was that?
It was probably, I don't know, 2014 or 15 or something like that,
And how into record collecting were you at this point?
I started record collecting back after high school, and in college I had a job at a used bookstore, and they sold records and other, media as part of that. And this was before streaming and all that, and before kind of the vinyl resurgence. And so I could pick up albums for 50 cents or $1 or something like that. And it was my way of kind of exploring music that I'd always heard of, but had never really heard. So, the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or Billie Holiday or Aretha Franklin or, whoever it is, I could pick up an album. If I didn't like it, I'm only out $1 or, whatever. And, I lugged those around with me to college and as I moved and things like that. And, over time, I kind of fell out of it a little bit, like records are not the most convenient hobby to have. They're big, they're expensive, they're heavy, they take up a lot of space, and at some point I kind of put them in a storage shed and just kind of forgot about them. And then when my kid was born, I got back into it as sort of a way of kind of, hey, let me introduce you to music. Let me share kind of this, this thing that I'm interested in. I kind of brought them out of storage, and then it sort of took off from there. And that's when I started, going to record store days and really kind of digging in. And so that was one of the first after my now 10-year-old was born.
To add a little bit of context, so records or vinyl records peak in 1978 with 2.5 billion in sales, and then basically fall off a cliff over the course of the next 12 years lowest point being 1993 with 10.6 million. So going from 2.5 to 10.6 million, obviously the rise of CDs. Then it basically hovers around 10 to 14 million all the way until 2007.
Yeah, and
then, wouldn't you know
the disappointing thing is I didn't buy more vinyl when they were producing less of it, because that's when it was cheap. And now those records are, they're hard to come by. So I missed that window, unfortunately.
Well, yeah. Well, but I think it's really interesting. So, then you start to see this steady incline, and every year goes up and up and up and up. And then at 2000, so you said yours was probably around 2014.
Yeah.
There's about 250 million in sales, right? And you figure, so 5 years later, they were at like 500. So in those 5 years, it doubled. And then since then, now it's doubled again, and then some to, over 1.2 billion. And I bring this all up to say that I'm not saying that Record Store Day was responsible for that, because it came back for a million other reasons. But I think it's an important piece here that even you and your experience in, looking through this stuff, rediscovering it, sort of falling in love again for the first time, and then, going to your first Record Store Day, where it doesn't seem like you had, like, that wasn't a transformative experience. You were going there looking for something cool, right?
Exactly. I was looking for a record that I could only get then and there. And as I attended more and more of them, and I think as they changed and grew, I enjoyed it more and more. The last Record Store Day I went to, there's a shop in Walnut Creek here nearby, and, people start lining up probably the night before. And there's a little bit of this like joy of, hey, we've got our lawn chairs, we've got our blankets, there's usually someone blasting music and kind of, kind of contributing to the excitement. The owner, arranges for a local a coffee company to come out, or donuts or that sort of thing. It's timed with other sales and whatnot. And so there's just this like excitement and anticipation of, waiting, and this joy of sort of like, okay, I'm going to be here for a few hours, and I can talk to people who want to geek out about this like I do. And, hey, what are you here for? Oh, hey, if I'm in line ahead of you, if I find the record that you're looking for, I'll grab it for you and I'll give it to you so you don't miss out. Oh, what'd you get last year? What was the last concert you went to? Oh, tell me about this. And you make friends, and it's a day. It's something that I look forward to, months in advance. They do a nice job of sort of, I think one of the, great sort of marketing successes of Record Store Day is they have this drip campaign where they will announce the ambassador, and you get excited. Oh, Post Malone or whoever is part of this event. Gives me a little sense of maybe what to expect. And then they release the list of albums that are going to be available on Record Store Day. And then the record stores themselves kind of jump in and they say, hey, the list is out. What are you all looking for? Let us know and we'll put in orders for that. And so you have this kind of lead up. And then as you get closer, you start seeing, record stores talking about the inventory they're getting. Hey, the boxes are arriving. We're unpacking the boxes. Some record stores will, do live events, over social media to show you, hey, we're unpacking, we're setting up. Let's flip through all the stuff that we have. And so you have even, again, leading up to these points in time to sort of like check in with the community, build that excitement. And it's something that you, again, look forward to versus it just being a date on the calendar that, you gotta remember to attend.
I want to put a pin in the community piece and come back to it for a second. Here's another stat for you. Only 50% of people who buy vinyl own a record player.
Oh, interesting.
So super fascinating, right? So you just get, you're talking about people who are either A, collectors, B, putting it up in their house for like artwork purposes or like basically interior design, or C, just supporting the artist. Like they're just there for just that. Like I want to give them money, a virtual donation or a physical donation in some way.
I don't think you're wrong about that. Yeah, I mean, it's true because you see a lot of artists talking about the fact that the economics of, streaming don't necessarily work in their favor. Touring can be very expensive, especially if you have artists that are coming from overseas. It's hard to make money as, a musician nowadays. And so I think you're right that there is, a subset of fans that know, okay, a greater proportion of the money I'm spending on this physical media is going to go to the artists that I know and love and want to support than if I listen to them on, a streaming platform or that sort of thing. I'll give you an interesting example. My 10-year-old, they asked me for Christmas for their favorite band in the world is this band called AJR. And they said, Dad, I want an AJR record for Christmas. And I said, well, you don't have a record player. Like, you listen to them on Spotify. And they said, oh, I want to just put it up in my room. And so, they have a framed kind of special edition of their favorite AJR album, on the wall in their room. And it's very much just sort of like showing that they're a fan. When they have friends come over, they like to say, oh, look at my AJR record. I'm such a big fan of theirs. And, it's part of what allows them to kind of personalize their space in the house.
Totally. And this is, I'm rounding in my point here. This is crazy. This is the craziest stat yet. 8%, this is according to Statistia, 8% of US recorded music revenue, 8% in 2024 was vinyl records. That is insane. You think of how many people and the percentage of time they spend listening to music on digitally versus vinyl. And yet revenue-wise, it's 8%. Like if I was a musician and you look at that and you go, where should I spend my time and effort? I should spend my time and effort getting people to buy my vinyl record. You know what I mean? Like, screw merch. You know what I mean? Like 8%. I mean, that's insane. That's a huge number. Now, I'm sure we could probably get really deep into the stats and you could probably break out, I think Taylor Swift did, 200 million copies or something crazy. Not 200 million, 2 million copies or something like that. So I'm sure that there's all sorts of crazy wonky data in there. But again, like, that's crazy for the amount of hours, like hours per dollar. That's a huge deal. And again, the utility of it being physical, transforms the experience such that it's not just about listening to the music, it's about this other stuff. Because you don't feel like you're supporting the artist by getting their streams up. You know what I mean? Like, you're not. I mean, you are, but like, you don't feel a part of it, right? And I think that you said it perfectly, right? The 10-year-old. That's the perfect use case for this. And it's like, I'm thinking about it now, like, I don't own a single record. I definitely am very guilty of making fun of my mother for still having a record player and keeping all of her records back when, back 20 years ago, in the lowest point of the low, which shows what I know. And I remember that. I'm like, Mom, what do you need? She's like, sometimes I like to listen to it on the record player. So it's like, I think that me rounding to this point is like, Record Store Day is a thing that is a mechanism to sell more records, but also ended up being for community. Buying records is about literally buying music from an artist, but actually it's about something completely different. And I think that like we often conflate, we misrepresent why our buyers are buying our stuff in the first place and what they're doing with it. And when you only give them one way of doing something, that inherently there's way more value that you can either create or extend to that person by doing it in a totally different way. And like, that's like, I mean, A, it's kind of business 101, but B, it's like, it's marketing 101, right? It's like, if I could give you Like no one on earth, if you had told someone, be like, I can give you this song for free for $0, or you can pay, $40 for it. No, economist would sit there and be like, well, yeah, nobody would ever. Why would you pay $40 for something you can get for free? It turns out, actually, you would. And so I think that all of that is super, super relevant.
I think you're exactly right, and I think there's a couple of kind of related points to the ones that you're making, which is, part of the reason that someone is going to pay $40 for something that they could, in theory, get for free is because, the artists and record labels have done a nice job of sort of selling the exclusivity and, selling the differentiation and, frankly, understanding their audience. The one of the big appeals of Record Store Day is I can only get it on this day. I can only get it by going to this store. There's only X number of copies available. Outside of that, one of the appeals of record collecting is that there's so much differentiation between the country that a record was pressed in, or the year that it was pressed, or the pressing plant, or the color, or the speed at which it plays back, or in some cases, the staff that worked on it. One of the most kind of coveted records out there is a copy of Led Zeppelin's second album, because the original audio engineer, Bob Ludwig, mastered it at a higher volume, and the record needle would skip out of the grooves because, the power of the music was so loud. And so, people will pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for a copy that he pressed versus any other pressing of this particular. Yeah, the bad one that they stopped because it was causing turntables to skip. And so, they do a nice job of, understanding, hey, people want something that's, exclusive and scarce and, also has, value to it. There is a different experience of listening to that album, the bad version versus, the current represses.
Without a doubt. And I think that the point that I didn't sort of put an emphasis on there is that you're making the first part of it, which is they added on this exclusivity piece so that you own this thing that feels really specific or special to you, that thing inherently will increase in value in theory, right? But also is utility. You could listen to it if you want. And then finally, you already listened for free a lot of times. And this is where it comes back to the content marketing piece for me, which is this band that let's just say you just found out who they are with, your kid, where it's like, who knows when they found out this band? They're 10. I don't even know how 10-year-olds find music. Probably on TikTok. But they find this band. They listen to oh my gosh, I love this song. Their friend loves this song. Then they listen to, 1,000 hours of this person on Spotify. And then they finally get to go to their concert for the first time or whatever. Or maybe they never have been to their concert because they can't afford to go to the concert. But what they can't afford to do is buy that they can go to the record store on Record Store Day, sit in line for 7 hours, and then they can buy this special thing that they have and their friends don't, and they can put it up on their wall and they feel cool and all those things. But it starts with they were given free content that they spent a ton of time with and are already passionate about. And it's like, we in marketing tend to, especially in content marketing, over the years historically, we want to do the opposite. We want to say give us your money for this thing, even though you don't know what it is. Give us this, give us all of your information that you've ever, including the name of all your, firstborn kid and a vial of blood and all these things, so that you can get our white paper, when in reality, what we should be doing is giving them so many things that they love that by the time you get to the chance, to ask, whatever. Gary Vee wrote a book about this, right? It's jab, 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 right hook. So it's it's the thing that we know, but then when you see it in practice, and then all of a sudden now it's a lot stickier.
That's such a good point, because I think it's sort of putting trust in your audience, right? We always, as content marketers and B2B marketers, I think, worry that We have one opportunity to kind of hook our audience. If we don't do it now, if we don't get everything we need, this is going to pass us by. And, to your point, there's this trust of, hey, I am confident that over time, I'm going to show you the value of my content, in this case, my music, and I'm going to get you to do exactly what you said. I'm going to get you hooked. And that will be rewarded down the line. It's definitely a long-term play, but it is very counter to, I think, a lot of our instincts of squeeze as much as we can, as quickly as we can.
Yeah, because we're seeking the transaction, right? We're seeking them to do the thing, which is transact with, giving us money. Whereas, and again, that's what I'm saying, like records where they started out as that too, right? With the caveat that like, hey, support your local record store, otherwise they will go out of business. Like, you're responsible for this too. But I think that's the important part. Is like, we're both saying the same thing. The marketer is saying, buy our stuff. The record store is saying, buy stuff from us. It's the same exact message, but one is received in a way that is very different. And I know there's other things that go into that, but I think that it's so important to say, and one is a retailer where you have like this relationship directly with the artist or whatever, but what's saying you can't do that for your marketing team? Right? What's saying that if you're the retailer in this case, what could you create that connects your buyers to something that they feel much more passionate about? And if that's your goal, is to do that or connect them with their peers or things, which we do. So anyways.
I get it totally. I mean, I think there's so many sort of nice best practices in here. We've talked a lot about community building. We've talked a lot about, kind of understanding your audience. I think the other thing that I think about with record collecting and kind of as you're talking and the points that you've made is there's various kind of entry points here. And there's a very natural, smooth glide path to sort of upgrading, if you will. So as I think about, product adoption and, customer acquisition, my 10-year-old can start on their record collecting journey with a single record that they hang on their wall. And that's totally fine. I, can start with, a $200 or $300 or $400 turntable and go in much harder, if you will. And there's a whole spectrum, right, of casual to really passionate collectors. And each one can be very satisfied. And over time, you can sort of, I started with a box of 50 records. And I had that for a long, long time. I don't even want to admit to how many I have behind me now, but I've certainly, up-leveled over time. And, there's kind of a space for everything. And there's very, again, natural paths to sort of, expanding your relationship with vinyl records, if that makes sense.
Can I say another thing that I think is kind of funny? The stat of the 50% who don't own a record player thing, which we explored a little bit, but I do want to touch on it. One other final piece of this. I was thinking about this with your 10-year-old, because I have a 13-year-old nephew. And I was like, his birthday's coming up. And I was like, that would be a cool gift. Buy him a record of like his favorite artist, buy something that's like limited edition or cool in some way or whatever. Buy him something. And then it's like, oh, how do I listen to this? It's like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Like, go find a record player. Where is there one? Should we go to grandma's house so we can listen to it? Like, it opens up a world of, it opens up a surprise. It opens up serendipity. It opens up an adventure in a way that giving someone something digital could not necessarily do. And especially as you think about kids and like what they find interesting, that's like another piece of this is like, if your kid was like, hey, Dad, I want to listen to this, is like, that creates a moment where they come and talk to you and say, hey, could I use your record player and play this? And then you listen to it together. Again, all that stuff I think is just so cool. And I don't know what another example would be that we could use, that's something that a marketer could do to do this. But maybe it literally is give your customers records. Maybe it's that, right? Right? I mean, I don't know.
It makes me think of nostalgia, right? It makes me think of sort of this, I think they call them kidults, right? It's this idea of, hey, I'm an adult. I want to do the activities that I enjoyed as a kid. I want to build Lego sets and do that type of thing. And, whether or not you listened to records when you were a kid, there is still this feeling of nostalgia there, right? And exactly what you said, Ian, that there was this feeling of just sort of exploration and adventure. And I think, that is something that marketers can and should totally tap into. It can be difficult, but, there is a whole, there's a whole generation of multiple generations of people out there that want to sort of, relive those experiences that they had when they were younger and will invest a lot in doing that. And I think this is one example of that where, I'm at an age where I have more disposable income than I did before. I can invest in this hobby and I can enjoy it. And it makes me feel like a kid again a little bit to, do this exploration that you talked about.
Yeah, and I think like if I went over to somebody's house, friend's house, and our kids are running around and they just went over and took out their record player and put on a record, I'd be like, that is freaking cool. You know what I mean? And I think that's like the other piece of this is just like, I can't remember if I told you this, that I have an original Genesis and original Nintendo. My 13-year-old nephew came over and played it the other day. We actually do it quite a bit. It's literally sitting out. It's like 6 feet away from me. I'm staring at NHL 96. And he was like, I'm going to go tell all my friends at school that I got to play like the original Nintendo. And like we couldn't get it. We couldn't get the cartridge, the game to load or whatever. And
did you blow on it, Ian?
Yeah, we blew on it. We caressed it. We tapped certain part of it. We did all the things that you do. And he basically, we couldn't figure it out. And he just like spammed the select button or the restart button like 50 times in a row. And it like came on. And like, it was like the most proud I think he's ever been in his life. And probably the most proud I've been of him. And, but anyways, I say that to say like the analog stuff, there's something about it. There's something special and it is different. And I don't know what the takeaway is, but it just is.
I think to me, the takeaway is, and I fully agree with you, I think it's when done right and in a very strategic way, analog physical media can really make an impact, right? We're all flooded with digital stuff all day, every day. There's the whole joke of you go from kind of your mid-sized screen to your small screen to your big screen over the course of the day. And, the thing that cuts through that are physical things because they're sort of so far, few and far between nowadays. I think we talked a little bit previously about, Costco Connections magazine, alumni magazines, right? These are things that, most of my mail is junk mail, when I get anything. And when the Costco Connection magazine comes, like, I don't even really know what I'm looking for, but I'll flip through it and check it out. And, it's just different and it hits a little differently. And so, we've done a little bit of that at Upwork. We had some thought leadership that we published a couple of years ago, kind of our main piece of thought leadership around kind of the rise of remote work and the use of global freelance talent. And we published it as a little mini book. And, it was something that gave away at conferences and events, and something that our sales team was able to use as a leave behind for their clients. And, our first pressing of that sold out, if you will. And we had the sales team coming to us and saying, hey, we need more. This is making a difference. And that's not the right approach for everything that we do, of course. But, in select cases, it's really hard to do right. But when you do it right, I think it really kind of cuts through the noise and this digital clutter that we all feel.
My final takeaway for Record Store Day is this is an idea for the B2B marketing booth at the conference. Here's what you should do. Go to a local record store, buy like 50 of them, the whatever, different sizes, whatever. Take a box, put the lid on it, and make them like 1 to 50, and then when people come to your booth, they get a record, and they don't know what it's going to be. And I guarantee you'd have a real hot, and they'd just be like, yeah, and we're going to put one that's worth, I don't know, a couple $100 or something like that. That would be pretty rad.
I'll tell you right now, Ian, I'd visit that booth.
I know. And it's like random and weird and like, but it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. There's a chance that you get something cool. There's a chance that, hey, you see, you watch a demo, you get a, spin the wheel. Well, instead of doing that, do this. That's my final takeaway.
I like it. And again, it's cutting through the noise. It's leaning into that exploration and adventure, and it's, doing something a little different than what everyone else is doing.
Robert, any final thoughts on Record Store Day or vinyl or anything there?
Ian, I feel like I could chat, for hours on vinyl. So it's kind of a loaded question. I think the only other thing is, Meredith hit on this a little bit earlier, is that Record Store Day at the end of the day is really an awesome in-person event. And, in-person events, I think in general can be really effective for marketers. And again, when they're well thought out and done well, one of the great things about this is that, again, it's about community. It's about doing something that people appreciate and like. It's about feeling very kind of personalized to the things that they're passionate about. And, I think, again, it just reinforces the fact that there are great ways of connecting with your customers, much more directly and of course, physically than, over email or something. And, they have a much stronger impact when you are face to face with someone and, they remember your name, or you have a conversation, or, you enjoy the coffee or the excitement in the atmosphere of, that the event brought you. So I think it's the way that these are run are, a good example of how in-person events can and should be run and can really make a difference to marketing efforts.
All right, let's get a little bit more info just on how marketers are using Upwork, how content people are using Upwork. I think we've brought, we've been an Upwork customer since I started Casting. It's 5 years. From the day we opened the doors, we've used Upwork for a variety of different things. We have employees that used to be on Upwork and are now employees. We have people we still use on Upwork from a contract basis. So we're huge fans of it, but we use it for everything from, IT related type stuff or creative type stuff or video projects or all sorts of different cool things that we're working on. But yeah, what are you seeing on the Upwork side? How do you think about, reaching your customers with content?
The awesome thing is we're Upwork customers as well. So, 3/4 of my team is talent off of Upwork. And to your point, Ian, they do a million different things. We have writers, we have copy editors, we have audio engineers, we have video producers, we have content strategists, we have operations folks. The really great thing about Upwork is that, if you need something done and there's a very specific skill that you're looking for, you can find it on Upwork. And so, we're able to really tap into the expertise of this global community of freelance talent and, find people that are just really, really good at what they do and spin up programs and make projects more successful because of that. One of the areas that we are investing in our team is AI exploration. And so we can hire AI experts off of Upwork to build us custom GPTs that we use to enhance our content operations or to help us understand, the changing landscape of AI, or to use, AI enabled tools, whether that's audio or video or image or, written generation, So it's sort of like, if you can dream it, you can do it on Upwork and you can find the right person to make it happen.
Well, for our listeners, go check out Upwork. Tons. Every project in the future, I think, is going to be this combination of your FTEs, your agencies, you folks on Upwork, AI, agents, like just all of that stuff. And it's cool to sort of envision and re-envision, how to bring the most creative stuff possible to your audiences and hopefully inspire, educate, and entertain them.
Well, I'll give you one real example, of how I think Upwork and how we've used Upwork to produce content and reach our audiences here is, we had a need to record customers for case studies and things like that. And so we hired a video producer off of Upwork. Over time, his role grew so that he did these remote recordings for us. Then he did in-person recordings, and then he did event support. And he joined us full time, much like some of the folks that you mentioned, where, he's now the director of our multimedia enablement team. And he has since built out a team of experts that work freelance on Upwork. And so he has an audio engineer, he has a video editor. And as they've grown, the capabilities of the entire team has grown. And so now we just launched a podcast ourselves, and we're using AI voice generation that is, powered by the experts on our multimedia team to scale that podcast and make the production process efficient. And we're exploring AI avatars, and we're creating audio versions of the content that we have in our resource center so that it's more accessible for our audience. And so this whole function that, contributes to our content program in multiple ways and helps us reach our audience in ways that they prefer, whether that's, written or video or audio, is all because of one, freelancer who started a few years ago and worked, maybe 10 or 20 hours a week. And, we have found, multiple ways of, leaning into his expertise and, doing it in a way that benefits our program and the company as a whole.
Any favorite projects that you've done over the past little bit?
Yeah, I'm really excited about our podcast that I mentioned. It's called Work Week. And basically, we have a wonderful research institute here at Upwork where we're looking at just the world of work. How is it changing? What do people need to know in order to be successful, both as business leaders and, as practitioners? How's AI changing all of that? And so they do some wonderful exclusive research. And I think, in the age that we're in, and an age of sort of content commoditization, having exclusive research, having, true insights into our area of expertise is really a differentiator for us. And so we're able to lean on them for, topics and ideas. We've cloned their voices. And so we've cut back on a lot of the production hurdles that have frankly stopped us from doing podcasts in the past, or, caused us to pause on podcasts that we had started up. And for the first time, we're sort of like able to actually keep a podcast going and seeing some nice traction there, and, really sharing content that we think is valuable and useful for people without that kind of transactional hook. We want to share this info with you. We want to build our trust and authority with you, and we hope you like it and enjoy it. And, it's been a nice early success for us.
I love that. So cool. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Caspian, we make podcasts and video series and all sorts of stuff for other people. And I think you're exactly right. It's just about removing all of the barriers to create something meaningful. And like, so many people get caught into the operational aspects of, because this stuff is complex. Like it's super complex building a show. Like it can be really not complex, but it can be very complex, and just removing barriers to try to make something that you feel is special, and hopefully that your audience feels is special.
I think it's, a good lesson for us is, again, we have tried to launch podcasts in the past, and we've always sort of gotten a few episodes out and then have a hard time, we've had a hard time keeping it going. And so it's being honest with ourselves of like, what is actually realistic? What can we do and what can't we do? What did we learn from, previous iterations? What are our budget constraints and our resource constraints and things like that? And then, designing something that is different from what we've designed in the past, that has repeatedly not worked, and, kind of breaking the mold a little bit. And, the AI voice generation, we're very upfront about it. We let people know at the beginning of every, podcast, hey, this is our words, but not our voices. And, so far the reaction has been good. I think people appreciate kind of that transparency and the fact that we're not trying to fool them. But it's also, that's one of the main unlocks that we had to do in order to take this off the ground. We couldn't do it otherwise. We just wouldn't have the, again, the resources, the budget, the time, et cetera, especially for something like a podcast that can take a little bit of time to grow and to, kind of catch hold.
All right. Any other final thoughts on content strategy or anything like that?
I think the only thing I'd say is I'm just thinking about, just inspiration. It's always something that I look for as I look to evolve our program and share with the team and what are we doing or what aren't we doing that we should be doing, or what are other cool brands doing out there. One of the big places I look for inspiration is media organizations. I think newspapers and magazines have really great content out there. The New York Times, I think, has some of the best content out there. They have a poetry column, which, poetry is sort of like, hard to get excited about, but they have this interactive kind of poetry articles where they walk you through line by line, and they use interactivity to showcase the rhymes and the sentence structure and the meaning and the, kind of symbolism behind it. And it's a very engaging way of, kind of understanding poetry. It makes me think about how do you reframe things so that, people can, again, kind of get engaged with it more and sort of dive deeper and feel like, okay, you're talking to me, not at me. The other thing that they have that I've been obsessed with lately is this series called Overlooked. And it's basically, obituaries that they didn't write that they should have written, back when it happened. And, there's sort of like, people that, have had an impact on society or the world that didn't get the recognition that they deserved. And, one of the most recent columns was about, one of the first female executives in the United States and how she helped build the Macy's empire, at a time when, most women did not have the opportunity to do that. And it looks at her life and her contributions and also kind of, the kind of modern, kind of take on it. And it just reminds me of the value of good storytelling. Like this is at the end of the day, just really interesting, intriguing stories that are told really, really well. And there's not a lot of adornment to it. It is just, just words on a page, if you will, but they are so captivating and so awesome. And when you have someone who can tell a story in a really strong way, like doesn't matter what the story is, it hooks you. And so those are two things that I go to again and again as sort of like, oh, I need like my creative jolt. Like they're doing this really well and, kind of refilling my creative bucket, if you will.
That'll be next episode.
There you go.
Robert, what's your best advice for a first time head of content, head of brand, head of content marketing?
I think, no content program is successful in a vacuum. And the thing that I've really tried to invest in over my career is relationship building and, getting to know my colleagues and other teams. What are their priorities? What are their pain points? How can we partner on projects? At the same time, let me lift the curtain of kind of, our team and what we do and what we can offer and the cool stuff that we have available to you. And so I'm very big into one-on-one meetings and check-ins and information sharing. And, when we're a remote first company, but when we have the opportunity to get together in person, spending time with people, getting to know them as people. I think any time you put into relationship building, it's sort of like, it's interest in the bank, right? Like it pays out again and again and again. And so I think the best thing any content leader can do is just be best friends with their cross-functional partners and, look for ways to really partner with them.
Robert, wonderful having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining. We super appreciate it. We'll see you next Record Store Day. And for listeners, go to upwork.com. Anything else? Anything we missed?
I think we hit it all, Ian. I appreciate it. I'll give you a call ahead of next Record Store Day and we'll do it together.
There you go. We'll cover it live. for Remarkable. I love it.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.